News we're following right now at 5, a measles outbreak continues to worsen. There have been almost 400 cases in 18 states, and at least one child has died.
And here in Connecticut, pediatricians are urging children and adults to get vaccinated. Your chief political reporter, Susan Raff, is live at the state office building in Hartford, where doctors are really reinforcing the importance of those vaccinations. Susan.
Erin, they certainly are. In fact, about a dozen pediatricians came to Hartford today to emphasize the importance of vaccinations, which they say are not only effective but safe. And they are very concerned about the measles outbreak we are seeing. And in fact, we learned today that there have been more measles outbreaks this year in just less than 3 months than there were for the entire year last year. Now, Connecticut does have a high vaccination rate, but pediatricians are concerned because they say there's a lot of misinformation out there, especially on social media. And the current U.S. Secretary of Health, Robert Kennedy Jr., has spoken out against vaccines. Now, Dr. Emily Hoagland was a pediatrician in another state. She says she treated a 7-year-old boy who had contracted tetanus from a rusty nail. He was not vaccinated.
He became progressively rigid and paralyzed and ultimately needed a tracheostomy or artificial windpipe and a ventilator or a breathing machine in order to breathe after his diaphragm or breathing muscle became paralyzed. This would have been completely preventable with routine childhood immunizations such as DTaP.
The DTaP vaccine helps prevent tetanus as well as polio and even whooping cough. And according to the CDC, these vaccines and the MMR, which helps protect against measles, will prevent about 500 million illnesses and more than 500,000 deaths from 1993 to 2003. We should point out not 500,000, but more than 1 million. And doctors also say that when it comes to these vaccines, getting your child vaccinated early helps prevent and protect other children. And the final thing that they want to point out also is that if you have any questions about vaccines, you need to contact and have a conversation with your child's pediatrician. Your chief political reporter, Susan Raff, Channel 3, live in Hartford.